So today, we're going to dive into the evolution of the internet. And, this isn't just a story about technology. It's really a story about a question that gets to the heart of our digital lives. Who's actually in control? And really, it all comes down to this one big question. When you post a photo, write a comment, or just browse online, who truly owns that world you're living in? Well, the answer has changed a lot over the last 30 years. So let's start at the very beginning. All right, let's rewind the clock. We're going back to the 90s, to the very first version of the web. And believe me, it was a much, much simpler and quieter place than the internet we know today. This was Web 1.0. People often call it the information web. And the best way to think about it is like a giant global library. It was built on these open, decentralized ideas. And its whole purpose was to let you find and read information. That's it. I mean, just think about how different this was. The pages were totally static, kind of like digital brochures that didn't change. You had a very small number of people actually creating content, and the rest of us, we were just the audience. There was almost zero interaction. You could read, but you couldn't really write back. And that right there was the core problem. It was like having this amazing library with every book in the world, but you weren't allowed to write in the margins or even talk to the other readers. It gave us information, sure, but it was a one-way street. It was missing a voice for the average person. The internet just had to evolve. And that need for us to participate, to interact, is exactly what set the stage for the next massive shift. Around 2004, everything started to change. The internet stopped being a monologue and became a conversation. And we, the users, were finally handed the microphone. Welcome to Web 2.0. This is the internet you and I use every single day. It's the participative social web, and it was really kicked into high gear by three huge forces: mobile phones, putting the internet in our pockets, the explosion of social media, and the power of cloud computing. All of a sudden, we weren't just reading the content, we were creating it. Web 2.0 gave us some incredible superpowers, right? We started writing blogs, we uploaded our own videos to YouTube, we shared every detail of our lives on Facebook. We built these huge, thriving online communities. The web became this dynamic, interactive, and honestly, a much more human place. But there was a catch. This explosion of free and easy-to-use services came with a pretty serious hidden cost. We were given all these amazing tools to create and connect, but there was a fundamental trade-off happening behind the scenes. And here is the absolute crux of the issue. We got to read and write, but the platforms, they got to own. Every photo, every comment, every single piece of data we created became a product. It became a commodity that was owned and sold by just a handful of massive, centralized companies. Our attention and our personal data became the new oil. So this centralization thing, it created some pretty serious issues. First, our data isn't really ours. The platform controls it. Second, a single company can decide to censor your content or just kick you off their service entirely. And finally, when you store all that valuable data in one giant pot, it becomes a massive, juicy target for hackers. So that brings us to today and the next chapter in this story. It's a vision that's being built as a direct answer to the problems of Web 2.0, a new internet built on a really revolutionary idea: ownership. And this is Web 3.0. The term was actually coined way back in 2014 by Gavin Wood, one of the co-founders of Ethereum. The core idea is simple, but it is so profound. What if we could have all the interactivity of Web 2.0, but instead of giant platforms owning everything, we, the users, get to own our data, our content, and our digital identities? So how on earth does that even work? Well, instead of all your data flowing through a central company server like Google or Facebook, a decentralized network spreads it out across thousands of computers all over the world. It's a peer-to-peer system. And what that means is there's no single owner and no single point of failure. The network itself is owned by the people who use it and build it. Okay, I know this might be sounding a little bit like science fiction, but the technology to make this a reality is being built as we speak. So let's take a quick peek under the hood. At the very heart of Web3 is a technology called blockchain. The simplest way to think of it is like a secure, shared digital notebook that isn't owned by any one person. It's the thing that makes true digital ownership possible for the very first time, without needing a big bank or a big tech company sitting in the middle of everything. So a Web3 app is just built differently. The website you see, the user interface, isn't on one company's server. And the app's core rules, its logic, are run by things called smart contracts that live on the blockchain itself. This is so important because it means there's no central server that can be shut down or that can decide to censor you. Okay, this all sounds amazing, right? But we've got to be honest here. This new version of the internet is very much still under construction. And like any huge new idea, it's having some serious growing pains. The biggest problems right now are things like scalability, user experience, and cost. For a normal person, that just means transactions can sometimes be slow and expensive. Using these new dApps, that's short for decentralized apps, can feel clunky, and trying to store a lot of data directly on a blockchain is just way too costly. These are the big reasons why everyone hasn't jumped on board overnight. But here's the good news. Thousands of developers all over the world are working on fixing these problems. There are technologies called Layer 2s. Just think of them as super fast express lanes built on top of the main blockchain highway. And they're making things dramatically faster and cheaper. Digital wallets, which are kind of like your passport to this new web, are getting way more user-friendly. And new storage systems are solving that cost problem. The point is, the whole ecosystem is growing up fast. Okay, so let's bring it all home and just look at the journey we've been on. From simply reading, to being able to write, to a future where we can actually own. So let's just recap this whole evolution. Web 1.0 was read-only, and it was owned by companies. Then Web 2.0 came along and gave us read-write. It was all about community, but it was owned by the platforms. And now Web 3.0 is the big vision for a read, write, own internet, where the focus is back on you, the individual, who can finally, truly own your own data in a decentralized world. And that leaves us with one final, and I think really important question. The next version of the internet is being built right now, as we speak. And as we move into this new era, you get to make a choice. Will you just be a user? Will you continue to be the product? Or will you be an owner?